Welcome to the deep dive. You've sent us a fascinating collection this time. Everything from a historical look at Hyderabad's forests under Nizams to like a flyer about a modern forest bathing experience.
Yeah, and there were those YouTube videos too covering that environmental issue, plus Wikipedia pages, news articles.
Okay,
Quite a mix.
definitely. So we're going to take all of that and really dig into what it tells us about Hyderabad's green spaces, past, present, and maybe what the future might hold.
It's a rich set of sources, for sure. And when you put them together, you really start to see a narrative emerge, don't you, about how Hyderabad has interacted with its natural environment over time.
Exactly. So our mission today is basically to understand why these green spaces are so significant to Hyderabad. We want to explore their history, what value they hold today, and unpack the pretty passionate debates swirling around their future, all based on the stuff you shared.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's start way back with the Nizam state. That research paper by Kagha suggests that forests weren't just, scenery. They were actually a really important part of how the state functioned.
Right, and what's interesting is the multifaceted way the Nizams apparently viewed these forests. Kalthi points out that their administration, which drew on Mughal and Persian traditions, recognized the diverse landscape and the inherent ecological value of these areas.
Huh.
It wasn't just about logging or timber, it was about the overall environmental balance.
Right, and it wasn't just ecology either, was it? The paper also mentions revenue strategies.
Mm.
So these forests were also key to the local economy,
Hmm.
providing resources, income,
Yeah,
supporting livelihoods.
exactly.
It's quite different from how we might think about a forest in a modern city today.
Precisely. These areas were essentially natural storehouses of biodiversity. They supported a wide range of species and helped maintain the region's ecological stability. And as the paper notes, they were also deeply intertwined with the daily lives and traditions of the people living there.
Hmm, interesting. Giving them cultural, maybe even spiritual importance.
Yeah, exactly. This early recognition by the Nizams, influenced by those, sophisticated administrative systems, it suggests a long-standing understanding in this region of the intrinsic link between a healthy environment and a prosperous state.
A lesson perhaps modern development strategies could revisit.
Perhaps. It does make you think.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today. We see a very different kind of interaction with forests. You sent us info about a forest bathing experience happening in Hyderabad, specifically April 5th, 2025, at Kasu Brahmananda Reddy National Park, KBR Park.
Ah, yes, this is a fascinating contrast to that historical perspective, isn't it? This forest bathing experience led by Manya Cherabuti. It's rooted in the Japanese concept of Shinrin-yoku.
Shinrin-yoku, right.
It's described as an immersive, quiet, and reflective walk in the forest. The idea is to help people feel more grounded, reduce stress, basically mindfully immersing yourself in the atmosphere of the forest.
Engaging all your senses.
Exactly. The smells, the sounds, the textures, all aimed at promoting relaxation and well-being. It's definitely a more active and intentional engagement with nature than just, say, going for a brisk walk.
That sounds really interesting. The description mentioned guided walks, mindful activities, sensory engagement, even opportunities for sharing your experience,
Mm-hmm.
all focused on connecting with nature for therapeutic benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And this is taking place in KBR National Park, which, according to the Wikipedia source, gained national park status back in 1998.
Right. And becoming a national park gives it a certain level of legal protection, signifies its recognized importance for conservation, at a national level.
Definitely. And what's also notable is KBR's own history. It was once part of a palace complex given to Prince Mukarram Jah.
That's right. Now, it's roughly 390 acres, or about 1.6 square kilometers, and it's
Huh.
often described as a jungle amidst the concrete jungle.
Yeah, that phrase really captures the contrast, doesn't it, between the natural and the urban environments we're exploring.
Absolutely. And it's not just any green space. Wikipedia lists, over 600 plant species and a really diverse array of animal life.
Yeah, 140 bird species, 30 kinds of butterflies and reptiles, and mammals like pangolins, civets, peacocks, jungle cats, porcupines.
It's a significant pocket of biodiversity right in the middle of the city.
So just to clarify, when we talk about biodiversity repositories, we basically mean these forests are home to a huge variety of plant and animal life, acting as a kind of natural bank for different species.
Exactly that. It really underscores how vital these remaining green spaces are for, well, for urban ecosystems, which brings us neatly to that contemporary issue you mentioned earlier, the proposed development near the University of Hyderabad.
Right. This is where things get really complex and quite controversial. We've got those YouTube videos from Abi and Niu and Times Now, plus that article, Silent Sentinels No More, all centered on the Telangana government's plan.
The plan to auction off around 400 acres of land near the University of Hyderabad in the Kancha Gachibowli area, correct?
Yeah.
For an IT park.
Yeah. And the central point of contention, as these sources make really clear, is this tension between, the need for development and the desire to preserve the environment.
The government argues the IT park will bring economic growth, revenue, the usual arguments.
But environmentalists, students, even some opposition parties are voicing pretty serious concerns. That Abi and Nia video is particularly, passionate about it. They emphasize the sheer size, 400 acres, is a lot of land in a dense urban area.
Yeah, it really is.
And they point to the University of Hyderabad's own records, documenting the biodiversity found on that specific land.
And what really stands out from these sources is the sheer number of different life forms documented there in the Kancha Gachibowli area. Silent Sentinels No More mentions over 455 species of plants and animals.
And what lives in Kancha Gachibowli puts the count of flowering plant species even higher, over 700.
Wow. Both sources detail a significant variety of fauna, too. Mammals, reptiles, over 200 bird species. Importantly, including the national bird, the peacock, and the state bird, the Indian roller.
And let's not forget the unique finds, like the endemic Hyderabad tree trunk spider, Mauritia hydrabadensis.
Ah, yes, that specific spider.
It really highlights how irreplaceable this habitat might actually be. The sources also note spotted deer, wild boars, porcupines, monitor lizards, various snakes and frogs.
So, beyond just being a list, what does this concentration of diverse species tell us about the ecological health and maybe the resilience of this particular urban green space? Is it effectively a biodiversity hotspot within the city?
That seems to be the argument, yeah. The sheer variety suggests a relatively healthy and interconnected ecosystem, and having endemic species like that spider really emphasizes its unique ecological value.
Right. And the Abi and Niu video and the Deshbach channel also dig into the long and complicated history of this specific piece of land.
Yeah, the ownership is a key point of dispute, isn't it? Apparently, way back in the 1970s, during the Telangana agitation, the Andhra Pradesh government intended to allocate around 2,300 acres to the University of Hyderabad.
Intended being the operative word.
Exactly. According to these sources, the official transfer wasn't fully completed, leaving the land technically, under government ownership.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see how these sort of unresolved historical issues can flare up into conflicts today. The Deshbach video details how, back in 2004, the land was even allocated to a private company, IMG Bharata, for a sports complex.
Oh, right, I remember reading that. But that deal was later canceled.
Yeah, in 2006. And more recently, rulings by the High Court and then the Supreme Court have upheld the government's ownership claim, which essentially paved the way for the current IT park proposal by transferring the land to TGIC around June or July 2024.
Okay, but even if the government has the legal right to the land, the question remains, is it okay to develop what so many are calling a vital green lung for the city?
That's the core environmental argument, yes. The significance of the area keeps being emphasized. API and NIU and other sources point out its potential as a crucial area for rainwater absorption, helping recharge the groundwater.
Which supplies many of the city's high-rise buildings, right? That's a big deal.
It is, and what's really interesting here is how interconnected everything in an ecosystem is. Losing this green cover isn't just about losing trees and animals. It apparently has real potential consequences for the city's microclimate.
Like what?
Well, several sources mention the potential for increased temperatures and a greater risk of flooding if this natural water absorption area is covered in concrete. What lives in Kancha Gachibowli even refers to a study suggesting a potential temperature rise of 1.4 degrees Celsius.
Wow, 1.4 degrees. That's a significant impact for the city.
It really is.
And the timeline of the government's actions and the resulting resistance sounds pretty intense. The sources describe those initial attempts to allocate the land, the renewed push for development recently, and then the strong reaction. Students, faculty, environmental activists.
We've seen reports of protests, arrests, even allegations of excessive force being used against the demonstrators.
Yeah, the Times Now W video even mentioned a high court order to stop the felling of trees at one point.
Right, though there were claims, according to some sources like Abi and Niu, that tree cutting continued despite that order. It really highlights the urgency and the high stakes involved here.
And as is often the case, there are political dimensions too, right?
Hmm.
The Dashback video points out that opposition parties like the BJP and BRS have also raised concerns.
Yes, and predictably, accusations of political motivations are flying from various sides. There's even been a call, mentioned in the Deshpact source, to have the land declared a national park under the Wildlife Protection Act.
Which would obviously be a very different outcome.
Completely. It shows a broader recognition, at least among some groups, of the area's ecological importance. What lives in Kancha Gachibowli does a good job summarizing the essential ecosystem services that urban forests like this provide.
Like regulating temperature.
Improving air and water quality, recharging groundwater, preventing soil erosion. These are benefits often overlooked, or at least undervalued, when the primary focus is purely on economic development.
This whole situation really brings us to the broader context of conservation in Telangana, doesn't it? Thankfully, you also shared some information from the Telangana Forest Department itself. It's good to see the state does recognize the importance of its natural heritage on some level.
Absolutely. The Forest Department materials highlight a significant number of plant, bird, mammal, and reptile species in Telangana overall, including important endangered animals like the tiger, panther, gaur, four-horned antelope, black buck, and marsh crocodile.
Okay.
The state also boasts, dense teak forests along the Godavari River and other valuable tree species like Nalamati, Yagisa, rosewood, Naripa, bamboo.
And Telangana has a network of protected areas, right? 9 wildlife sanctuaries and 3 national parks, covering, 21.16% of the state's forest area?
That's the figure given. And interestingly, Hyderabad is mentioned in that Forest Department info as the only city in the country with 3 national parks within its vicinity: KBR, Mahavir Harina Vanastali, and Mrugavani. Although, technically, the department itself specifies Mrugavani is in the Rangareddy district, which is just very close to Hyderabad.
Ah, okay. An important clarification.
Yes. The department also lists the tiger reserves, Amrabad and Kawal, along with their considerable sizes. And it outlines efforts for conservation outside of natural habitats ex situ conservation, like the Nehru Zoological Park in Hyderabad and various deer parks.
So it sounds like there are active strategies supposedly in place to protect wildlife habitats, like setting up base camps, anti-poaching measures, habitat improvement efforts, using eco-friendly technologies.
And monitoring. They also mention the potential for ecotourism in these protected areas.
Right.
What's also really encouraging from the 1t.org source is Telangana's ambitious goal, planting 340 million trees between 2025 and 2026.
Wow, 340 million.
Yeah, it's part of its larger aim to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. And this builds upon their earlier claimed success, planting over 1.2 billion trees between 2020 and 2024.
That's a huge number.
It is. And the focus, according to 1t.org, is on native biodiverse species and restoring ecosystems. They also mentioned that Future City initiative near Hyderabad, also aiming for net zero emissions, so there are definitely positive signals on a larger scale.
Okay. And we shouldn't forget Mrugavani National Park, the other one near Hyderabad. The guide you shared describes it as a peaceful escape, even though it's relatively small, 3.6 square kilometers, declared a national park in 1994.
Right, another important green space near the city. Mrugavani is apparently home to over 600 animal species, including spotted deer, black-naped hare, wild boars, and lots of bird species like the Indian peafowl.
And it offers activities, nature walks, deer spotting, an environmental education center, even safari rides, and it's open daily.
Yeah, sounds like a nice spot.
So when we put all this together, we see this really clear tension, don't we? The Kancha Gachibowli situation just throws it into sharp relief, this ongoing challenge of trying to balance urban development with the really pressing need to protect our environment.
It's definitely not a new challenge, but the context is always shifting, isn't it? We're seeing a conflict between that historical understanding of forests as, essential resources and modern urban pressures for economic growth, often measured purely in terms of IT parks and the revenue they generate.
And the immediate tangible effects of losing these green spaces in a rapidly growing city like Hyderabad, they're becoming more and more obvious. Rising temperatures, potential problems with water.
Right.
Like you said, this isn't just some abstract environmental issue. It has real consequences for the people living there.
Exactly. And the strong reaction from citizens, students, environmentalists in the Kancha Gachibowli case, It really shows a growing awareness and concern about these impacts. It indicates a resistance, doesn't it, to development that could seriously harm biodiversity and the local environment.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up our deep dive today, we've explored how forests historically played this vital role in Hyderabad, both ecologically and economically.
Mm.
We've looked at the modern appreciation for urban green spaces, not just for recreation, but for our health and well-being, like with that forest bathing experience.
Yeah, and we've emphasized the rich biodiversity present in Hyderabad's green areas, from the diverse life in KBR and Rugavani National Parks to the seemingly unique ecosystem of Kancha Gachibowli itself.
And finally, we've really delved into the current conflicts surrounding that proposed development near the University of Hyderabad, which just highlights the incredibly difficult decisions involved in balancing economic progress with the crucial need to protect our natural heritage.
Especially when you consider the details, the sheer number of plant and animal species documented in Kancha Gachibowli, its role as a habitat for the national bird and that unique endemic spider, and its important function in regulating the local environment.
Yeah.
It all underscores its significant value.
It really does.
Yeah. Which leads to, I think, a really important question for everyone listening to think about. As cities like Hyderabad continue to grow so rapidly, what are the long-term consequences of the development choices we make on these natural ecosystems? How do we truly find a sustainable balance between economic progress and our environmental responsibilities, especially considering everything we've just discussed from these sources?
Those are really critical questions, absolutely. And maybe listeners could also explore, what are the long-term effects of losing urban green spaces seen in other cities globally? Have other cities found successful strategies to balance development and conservation? What role can each of us play as individuals in protecting biodiversity locally? And are there specific success stories of urban green space preservation that maybe Hyderabad could learn from?
Yeah, good questions. Ultimately, our ongoing understanding and, perhaps more importantly, our appreciation of urban nature will be absolutely crucial in shaping a more sustainable future for cities like Hyderabad and, indeed, cities everywhere.